Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to work on an oldie but a goodie. This one comes from a viewer. It's from Bob, and Bob sent this in. This is an Ocean City 143. He asked me to tune it up. It's in beautiful condition. The side plates hardly have a scratch on them. Nice loud clicker and good chrome. He had some old linen line on it apparently, and I took it off, and I told him I would clean it up, so I just got done polishing the spools and all. But I want to show you how to take this reel apart, how it's made, and how to go about overhauling it if you happen to have one. So Ocean City was a lot like Penn, and or let me say it the other way, Penn was a lot like Ocean City. Penn was formed by the fellow who used to work at Ocean City in Philadelphia, and he actually formed Penn Reels right in Philadelphia. But Ocean City and Penn both had a good, better, best strategy in terms of fishing reels, much like Penn today has the entry-level Pursuit, and then it goes to the Fierce, and then it goes to the Battle in the spinning reel line. You'll find Penn did that with the Model 85, and then with the Delmar, and then with the Long Beach, and they all just stepped up a little bit. Well, the 143 is like the Delmar or the 185. It has the plastic side plates without the protective inner rings. This one is the, I think this is the 113. The badge is kind of worn off. But the better ones had a protective trim ring on the inside. And the notion with that is if you kind of bumped it, it absorbs some of the shock. The problem with the Penns, the Penn 85s and the Delmars, if you hit this, it's just going. It's going to crack, and then the reel is ruined basically. Well, it's ruined by today's standards because you can't get the replacement parts. Back in the day, you would have had to get a replacement part to make that work. But that's the main difference. Internally, I'm not going to do this reel today. Actually, this was sent to me by another viewer. This one is the Bay City, I guess, Bay City. But at any rate, we're going to do this one. We'll show you how it's put together and how to service it. And I can tell you, just because I had the spool off to clean it, that the internals to this one is pretty much the same design as the internals for many of the Ocean City reels. Just like the internals on the Penn reels are very similar, if not identical, and sharing parts between that 85, the Delmar, the Long Beach, even the Senator line, up to a certain extent. So we're going to pull that handle off. And I notice even though it's clean, there's a little bit of salt on there. So what I was doing is I was using 4.0 steel wool and a chrome polish. This steel wool probably still has some of that chrome polish on it, just to loosen it up, polish it up, and get the old wear off of it. So I know I did a video that continues to be popular on how to remove corrosion, but that's probably one of the easiest ways. Just get an automotive chrome polish. In this case, it's Turtle Wax's chrome polish. Get 4.0 steel wool. Don't go any more aggressive than that. And just a little bit of effort will do that. You'll notice I have a protective glove on my hand to keep some of those chemicals off of me while I work. And I'm also using a parts tray, which just happens to be the bottom of an old milk jug, to hold all the pieces and parts that I take off. Now, I know the internal designs of this reel. If you don't, go on the internet and get a schematic for the fishing reel so that you'll know the sequence that the pieces and parts come off and go back on in an exploded diagram. One of the better things to do is take pictures along the way. The reason for that is if you get stuck or if you've forgotten where a piece came from, you can always go back at critical moments in your disassembly. Look at the pictures you took and say, ah, there's where it went. For example, there was a little tension washer. This one always gets confusing. There's a tension washer that was sitting on top of the star adjuster, and when you go back to reassemble, you might say, did that go below the adjuster or above it? Well, you can take your picture and you can see where that came from. So we're just pulling out the screws for the cross posts now. That'll give us the view into the internals. And you should note on these that the side plate screws, the screws that go into the crossbars, are longer than the screws that go into the reel seat. Just like the pen reels, the reason for that is you don't want a screw sticking out beyond here where the line can grab it. So you'll notice that there's two different lengths, so that when you go to reinstall, you'll know that the longer one goes to the crossbar, the shorter one goes to the reel seat. So we've got that side plate off now. And this is, as I mentioned, it's a pretty common design within the Ocean City set. So we're going to start by taking off the jack and the yoke and the spool gear. This is a nice clean reel inside as it was outside. So this has got a little hook and eye kind of a thing. Loosen up the screw, you don't have to pull the screw out all the way. Flip it so that it'll clear the post, and then once it clears the post, you should be able to pull the jack out. That releases the yoke and the carrier, and then underneath that is the spool gear, which would sit inside like this. Interesting to note on these, the positions of the pieces. Again, take pictures along the way if you've gotten lost. We have two springs. Those can come out. Now on the front, when we go to release this bridge, you do not need to pull the two top screws. So you'll see the four over here. Two are bigger, two are smaller. On a pen reel you would pull all four. On the Ocean City you do not need to pull the top. They're holding the carrier arms for that yoke and jack assembly. They do not need to come out. If for some reason you've pulled them out, don't worry. Just remember as you go to set these back in that there's a groove that these ride in. Those grooves face inward. Okay, we just pushed those two out, so the whole bridge should come out now. Now I told Bob I'm going to replace the drag washers in this because I felt right away when I did the test that these are in need of replacement. These are older cork ones. We can see that they're pretty much glued on to the metal ones, and they've been pressed down over time. So the nice thing about this particular washer set is that the washers are the same as the Pen 155s, so we can go replace them. I'm going to take that steel wool and I'm going to clean up the leftover debris that was on those metal washers from the drag washers. And we're going to do all three, just to make sure that they're nice and clean on the reinstall. You can tell by the quality of components that the main gear, the bridge, and the other pieces, that this is a nicely made reel and it'll last a long time. As I said, if there's any mechanical or design failure, it's in that side plate, which if you ram it against a railing on a pier or the gun wall on a deck of a boat or drop it, it's subject to fracture. So that's a problem there. But other than that, the reels have stood the test of time, and this one's been around a long time. So that's just evidence that they're good reels. Okay, we've got that. This is spinning freely. If it wasn't spinning freely, I would pull the pin and I would pull the shaft off, but that's spinning freely. This is a service, not a rebuild, so I'm just going to put a drop of oil or two into the cone. We've got the anti-reverse dog's got a little bit of dried grease underneath it, so we're going to go grab that out right now. I'm just using the blade of a screwdriver to scrape that back off. This one, the anti-reverse dog, is kind of interesting the way they've chosen to do it. They put the spring in from the back of this, and that holds to a stud that's on the anti-reverse dog. And that spring is a different, it's like the Jigmaster spring to some extent. You don't have to struggle when you go to reload the reel. Okay, the hard fabric washer in the back is fine. We're going to go ahead and put the main one on. I'm going to come over here to my washer basket, and I'm going to go get some of the drag washers to replace. I'm going to use the HT100 drag washers that Penn has. They fit perfectly into this reel. So if you can't find a source for your The drag washers for Ocean City. Don't be afraid to use the parts for the 155 Beachmaster series. They are identical. They work great. Okay, I choose to use Cal's Universal Drag Grease when I go to reinstall drag washers. That's the purpose of the drag grease, is to keep them flexible so that they don't dry out like we just saw happen on the other ones. I put a dab or two on both sides of it. If there's any excess, I wipe it off. And as you'll see, it just sits beautifully inside that cavity. Direct match. Okay, next up we put the first of the round washers. There's 3 metal washers in this series. The first one is a round washer. The second one, the middle washer, is a keyed washer. That keyed washer always goes in the middle of the stack, and it fits in the 2 indentations that are inside the main gear here. Go ahead and put that on and make sure that those tabs sit inside the groove, because if they don't fit inside the groove, you're not going to be functioning properly with the reel. And then we're going to put the last one on, and then we'll put the last of the round washers on, and that bridge is complete. Well, it's complete as soon as I put the metal washer back on. There we go. And then I'll send these back to Bob. He can frame them or do whatever he wants with them. They're no longer of any use. Okay, on the service side, I cleaned up the spool earlier. I knew that. We're going to go ahead and put some grease onto the side plate burring. Notice that as we were doing this, that that burring is a little dry. Hey, for all the fans that like a brush, I went and got a brush. I don't use it much. Somebody said, why don't you use a brush to smear grease? There you go. Use the brush. Okay. And I appreciate my sense of humor every now and then. All right, I use the good old-fashioned screwdriver. I've been doing it all my life, and I'll probably continue to do it. But know that I have a brush. If you're so bent on that one, I have to have a brush. Okay, I'm going to reinstall the bridge then. That can go independent. Remember now, you got a dog that's floating here. You just want to line that up so that you can go put that back in. If you don't have a correct line, your screw won't go through, but you have something like what I just used there, which is an old carpenter's awl, and you can center it, use it as a center punch or a hole to get that going. The 2 big screws go below, as we noted, and you know that we didn't take the top screws out. All right, the screws are done below here. I'm going to go ahead and put the yoke assembly back together again. So we have a carrier here. Doesn't hurt to put a little bit of grease on that. Hey folks, here's that brush again. And put some on both sides and inside. Just get a little bit in the groove so it rides freely in the carrier. The carrier being the yoke. Here's the yoke. If it had any grease on it, you would clean it off, but it doesn't have any grease on it. I'm sure that's because it's dried out over time. Go with that. Next up is the spool gear. I want to get a little bit of grease onto the shaft of the spool gear here to enable it to come in and out freely, and when you go and release it with this free spool release, get some in the teeth, since we didn't put any in. Okay, as is typical, I may have just jumped a little bit. My camera just ran out of memory space. I had to change the card. So if there's something that's missing there, what I've done is I put some grease on the carrier, put grease on the yoke. I've greased the teeth and the shaft of the spool gear. Now I'm just going to align the hole in the carrier with the spool gear. Oops, not so fast. Got to put the 2 big springs on. Those are going to release the spool gear when you use the free spool release. Now I'm going to align it. Okay, now we've got them in and we're showing the grooves. Underneath the grooves, we're going to put the jack. And as we come down, you want to make sure that the jack lands on the pivot stud from the eccentric. Then you're going to bring the hook down. And this one you have to hold because sometimes when you're tightening that screw, it pulls that hook back up. We're in good condition there. And you just want to test to make sure it's pulling down. And what it's pulling, this is what's going to disengage. It's this outer carrier here with the 4 points. They line to the 2 points on the spool. You want to make sure that that's pulling back, which is what it's supposed to do. With that then, time to button the reel up. By aligning the holes, remember the long screws go in the crossbars. The short screws go in the reel seat. And I like to work kind of north, south, east, west. I like to get them on each side so that they're balanced. I misaligned the hole here. I guess that's because this swing arm for the free spool release is covering up the hole there. I backed it off because it's easier to put the side plate on if it's backed off. Okay, so we'll go northeast. Actually east and west, I guess. South, there is no north on this particular one. Then we come down and we'll put the short one into the base. Come over and put the other short one in. And this is the benefit of a parts basket. You only have one place to look for your pieces and parts. I've seen other folks lay them out on the table in front of them in the sequence that they came out. That's fine. I'm a little bit too clumsy, I'm afraid, on that. And as I put a tool down, as I move a piece of the reel, if I go grab some grease or something, next thing I know, I've hit the water and flopped them around a little bit. So I like to just keep them off to the side. Now here's the last one. I flipped that trip well over, and now we have that. Let's give this reel a spin. We'll just take it out. Oh, look at that. That's a nice spin. We have a little bit of a spool adjuster on the side. And when I took this reel to first test it, this was kind of chirping, and now we're doing fine. Okay, now we're going to grab the ferrule or the gear sleeve and grab the adjuster. Be careful with the adjuster now. You don't want to cross strip the gear sleeve. Now what's nice about these Ocean City reels is they have slots here where you could actually put a screwdriver to hold it without marring the inside, which is where the handle screw is going to go. I'm just going to hold it now with the handle as I tighten it down. And there's that little back off washer so that you don't back the adjuster all the way in. If I didn't put oil into the slot before, then now's a good time to go do that. And I don't know if I mentioned it when we started this, but Ocean City, on a lot of their reels, they actually have the wrench attached to the handle. This particular handle does not, but I guess somewhere along the line I had a bad Ocean City and I kept the wrench. So there you go. Here we are. We have the nice loud clicker. We have the Ocean City. It's the 143. It's a beautiful reel. It even has an anti-reverse, quiet as anything on the free spool release, and ready to go fishing. It's in beautiful condition. So Bob, this one's coming back at you, and congratulations on owning a beautiful reel there. I hope you've enjoyed it. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. If you like it, please subscribe, tell your fishing friends about it, and hope to see you on my next episode. Thank you for watching.